Meanwhile, Donald Trump has been telling reporters that an armada of U.S. Navy vessels is heading towards Iran.
An armada, we have a massive fleet heading in that direction, and maybe we won't have to use it. We'll see.
In the high-stakes theater of naval warfare, visibility is a form of deterrence. When an aircraft carrier wants to send a message, it sails in broad daylight, transponder singing, ensuring every satellite and coastal radar knows exactly where the iron fist of American power is resting. But when the mission shifts from coercion to preparation for kinetic engagement, the lights go out. This is precisely the chilling shift that has just occurred in the Bay of Bengal. The USS Abraham Lincoln, a nuclear-powered Leviathan serving as the flagship of Carrier Strike Group 3, has effectively ghosted the global tracking grid. After transiting the Strait of Malacca, a choke point that usually heralds a high-profile entry into a new theater, the vessel severed its Automatic Identification System, AIS, feed. For the casual observer, a 100,000-ton displacement of sovereign American territory simply evaporated. For military analysts and the nervous leadership in Tehran, however, this digital silence screams louder than any press conference. It signifies a transition to Operational Security Condition Alpha. The carrier is no longer just sailing, it is hunting. This tactical blackout coincides with a ferocious escalation in rhetoric from the White House. President Trump, oscillating between self-congratulation and apocalyptic warnings, has drawn a red line that seems to shift in real time. "We have a big force going toward Iran," he told reporters, framing the deployment as a direct response to Tehran's internal crackdown. His assertion that American pressure halted 837 hangings serves as a grim prelude to his threat. If the executions resume, the retaliation will make previous interventions look like peanuts. But rhetoric is cheap. Carrier strike groups are not. The redirection of the Lincoln from the Indo-Pacific theater, abandoning its watch over the South China Sea to sprint toward the Persian Gulf, is a logistical undertaking of massive proportions. It suggests that Washington is not merely posturing for a photo op, but is assembling the requisite kill chain for a multi-front air campaign. To understand the gravity of the threat currently steaming toward the Iranian coast, one must look beyond the hull of the carrier itself and assess the lethal ecosystem surrounding it. The Lincoln does not travel alone. It is the center of gravity for a floating fortress designed to dismantle nation-state defenses. Flanking the carrier are the Arleigh Burke-class guided missile destroyers, the USS Spruance, USS Michael Murphy, and USS Frankie Peterson Jr. These are not mere escorts, they are the shield and the sword. Equipped with the Aegis combat system, they create an impenetrable air defense bubble capable of swatting Iranian anti-ship missiles out of the sky. More importantly, their vertical launch cells are packed with Tomahawk land attack missiles. In the opening minutes of any conflict, long before a pilot enters hostile airspace, it is these destroyers that would unleash a volley of cruise missiles to blind Iranian radar and crater command and control bunkers. Then there is the unseen threat. Standard doctrine dictates that a U.S. Navy fast attack submarine, likely a Virginia or Los Angeles-class hunter-killer, is shadowing the strike group beneath the waves. Silent, nuclear-powered, and heavily armed, this submarine acts as the ultimate insurance policy. While Iranian surface radars scan the horizon for the carrier, the submarine can maneuver undetected into the littorals, ready to saturate coastal defenses with torpedoes or cruise missiles. But the true teeth of this armada lie on the flight deck of the Lincoln. Carrier Air Wing 9 has been tailored for specifically this kind of high-intensity conflict. The presence of the Black Knights of VMFA 314, flying the F-35C Lightning II, changes the calculus entirely. These are not just fighter jets. They are stealth data nodes capable of penetrating the overlapping fields of Russian-made S-300 and indigenous Bavar 373 air defense systems. The F-35C kicks down the door. It enters the airspace unseen, identifies targets, and relays that data to the non-stealth assets waiting in the wings. Following the F-35s are the relentless workhorses, the FA-18E F Super Hornets for heavy ordnance delivery and the EA-18G Growlers. The Growler is perhaps the most critical asset in this specific theater. Its sole purpose is electronic dominance, jamming enemy radar, blinding sensors, and severing communications. Against an adversary like Iran, which relies heavily on integrated air defenses, the Growler is the prerequisite for survival. While the naval movements grab headlines, the true indicators of an impending offensive are found in the dull, repetitive work of logistics aircraft. Tracking data from the past 72 hours reveals a frantic air bridge of C-17 Globemaster III heavy transports flooding into the region. These massive cargo jets are not carrying diplomatic mail, they are hauling the iron mountain needed to sustain high-tempo combat operations, spare parts, precision munitions, and specialized support crews. The destination of these flights is telling. Diego Garcia, the remote British Indian Ocean territory that serves as the unsinkable aircraft carrier for the US and UK, is seeing unusual bomber activity. With its extended runways, Diego Garcia is one of the few bases capable of hosting the B-2 Spirit stealth bomber and the B-1B Lancer. The implication is stark. While the Lincoln handles the tactical fight, strategic bombers are being positioned to strike deep, hardened targets, the underground enrichment facilities and mountain bunkers that standard fighter jets cannot touch. Simultaneously, the arrival of F-15E Strike Eagles at Muwafaq Salti Air Base in Jordan represents a massive injection of raw firepower. The Strike Eagle is a bomb truck, capable of carrying a payload far exceeding that of the stealth fighters. Their deployment, supported by KC-135 Stratankers for mid-air refueling, suggests a plan for sustained, deep penetration sorties. These aircraft are veterans of the region. They were the bulwark against Iranian drone swarms during the brief but intense flare-up in June 2025. By positioning 3 full squadrons of these heavy hitters in the theater, the Pentagon is ensuring it has the mass to overwhelm any defensive counterfire. Perhaps the most alarming indicator is not what is arriving, but who is leaving. Reports surfacing from Doha suggest a quiet but rapid evacuation of non-essential British and American personnel from Al Udeid Air Base. In the nuanced language of military signaling, this is the final warning. You do not pull support staff and contractors out of a secure facility unless you expect that facility to be on the receiving end of ballistic missiles. Al Udeid, home to some 10,000 American troops and the forward headquarters of Central Command, is zero ground for any Iranian retaliation. The regime in Tehran has long marked it as a primary target. The thinning of personnel there suggests that U.S. planners are clearing the decks, removing potential casualties from the equation to free their hand for offensive action. Complementing this physical evacuation is the electronic darkening of the battlefield. Open-source intelligence monitors have noted significant GPS disruptions over Iranian airspace, along with anomalies consistent with heavy electronic warfare testing. This is the preparation of the battlespace. Before the first missile flies, U.S. cyber and electronic warfare units probe the enemy's frequency spectrum, testing their ability to jam radars and spoof sensors. For the Iranian operators staring at their screens, these glitches are the ghosts of the machine, a prelude to the moment when their screens will go white entirely. The geopolitical rationale for this buildup remains murky, wrapped in the mercurial decision-making style of the president. Trump's narrative is one of humanitarian intervention, a muscular response to the slaughter of protesters. I convinced myself, he told the press, dismissing the idea that his advisors pushed for war. He points to the cessation of hangings as proof that his threats work. Yet, there is a dark irony unfolding on the ground. By the time the Abraham Lincoln reaches its strike position, estimated between January 24th and 26th, 2026, the protests it was ostensibly deployed to protect may have been largely extinguished. The regime's crackdown has been brutal and effective. If the streets are quiet, the casus belli shifts. Is this about saving protesters, or is that merely the pretext for a long-desired dismantling of Iran's nuclear and paramilitary infrastructure? This ambiguity creates a dangerous vacuum. If the U.S. launches a strike to protect a protest movement that has already been crushed, the operation risks being perceived not as a liberation, but as a naked act of aggression. It could achieve the one thing the Ayatollahs have failed to do: unite the Iranian public around the flag. External attack has a history of solidifying hardline regimes, allowing them to brand domestic dissidents as foreign collaborators. Furthermore, the timing suggests a swift and decisive philosophy that clashes with military reality. Trump reportedly desires a knockout blow, a shock and awe campaign that cripples the regime without dragging the U.S. into a prolonged occupation. But war has a vote. The assumption that one can bomb the IRGC, Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, into submission without triggering a messy regional conflagration is a gamble of historic proportions. The scale of the current mobilization draws uncomfortable parallels to the buildup before the 2003 invasion of Iraq. We are seeing a convergence of assets that exceeds the requirements for a mere punitive strike. If unconfirmed reports of the USS George H.W. Bush carrier group departing Norfolk hold true, the U.S. could soon have 2 full carrier strike groups, multiple bomber task forces, and land-based fighter wings converging on a single adversary. This is not a raiding party. It is an invasion force, absent the ground troops. The memory of the June War of 2025 looms large over these preparations. That conflict exposed critical vulnerabilities in the alliance's armor. Israel, usually self-sufficient in defense, found itself overwhelmed by the sheer volume of Iranian missile fire, suffering casualties that shocked the Israeli public. Prime Minister Netanyahu has reportedly been blunt with Washington. Israel cannot stand alone against the next wave. The current U.S. surge is partly a frantic effort to plug the gaps that were exposed last year, reinforcing Patriot and THAAD missile batteries across the Gulf states to create a denser defensive umbrella. The fear is not just of what Iran can do to military bases, but what it can do to the global economy. The Strait of Hormuz remains the jugular vein of the industrialized world, with 20% of the global oil supply passing through its narrow waters daily. Iran has mined these waters before. In a full-scale war, they would likely attempt to close the strait entirely. The economic shockwave would be instantaneous, oil prices vaulting past $200 a barrel, stock markets cratering, and a global recession triggered overnight. This is why diplomats from Cairo to Muscat are urging restraint, and why Beijing and Moscow are using the UN Security Council to denounce American aggression. As the clock ticks toward the Lincoln's arrival window, the window for diplomacy is welding shut. The intelligence picture depicts a region holding its breath. In Tehran, the IRGC is undoubtedly dispersing its mobile missile launchers into the mountains, hiding its naval swarms in coastal caves, and preparing its proxy networks in Lebanon, Iraq, and Yemen to open fire on command. In the Pentagon, the war rooms are buzzing with the grim calculus of target selection. Does Trump order a decapitation strike against the supreme leader? A surgical raid on the nuclear facilities at Natanz and Fordo? Or a broad campaign to degrade the Iranian military-industrial complex entirely? The dark voyage of the USS Abraham Lincoln is the physical manifestation of this uncertainty. It is a silent, nuclear-powered question mark moving at 30 knots toward the most volatile coastline on Earth. When it arrives, the answer it delivers could reshape the Middle East for a generation. The world is watching the water, waiting for the carrier to reappear or for the sky to catch fire. The next 72 hours are not just critical, they are historical.